The war did not begin with speeches for them or with clear promises about what would follow. It began with footsteps on frozen ground, with hands stiff from cold gripping tools or muskets, with letters left unfinished on kitchen tables. Long before America existed as an idea agreed upon, ordinary people stepped away from fields, shops, docks, and families into uncertainty. They did not know the ending. They only knew the moment required them. They came from farms and ports, from backcountry cabins and crowded towns stretched along the Atlantic coast. Some were young, barely old enough to shave. Others had children of their own, responsibilities already heavy before the war added more. Enslaved men sought freedom through service. Immigrants from Ireland, Germany, and beyond joined causes still unfamiliar. Native communities faced impossible choices, balancing survival against shifting power. Together, these people formed the living weight of the American Revolution, long before it earned that name. When conflict spread after the first clashes in Massachusetts, there was no standing national army to answer it. Militias gathered first, neighbors who trained together on village greens, bringing their own weapons and clothing. Many expected the fighting to be brief, a show of resistance that might force compromise. Instead, weeks turned into years. As militias gave way to the Continental Army, enlistments were often short, pay uncertain, and supplies unreliable. What held men together was less ideology than loyalty to those beside them. Their desire was simple and deeply human, to protect homes, families, and some measure of control over their lives. Few spoke in abstract terms about empires or political theory. They spoke about land they worked, debts they carried, and futures they feared losing. Independence, when it came into their language at all, meant distance from decisions made far away, by people who would never feel the consequences directly. It was not purity they sought, but stability. The obstacle was relentless hardship. Food ran short with alarming regularity. Uniforms disintegrated faster than they could be replaced. Soldiers marched without shoes, slept under thin blankets, and endured illnesses that spread faster than orders. Battles were terrifying, but boredom and hunger were constant. Many soldiers spent more time waiting than fighting, uncertain when or whether they would be paid, or if their service would be remembered at all. Women carried burdens no less heavy. While some followed the army as camp followers, washing clothes, cooking meals, and nursing the wounded, many more stayed behind to manage households alone. Farms had to be worked, businesses kept alive, children raised amid absence and fear. Letters crossed distances slowly if they arrived at all. News of death sometimes came months late if it came. The war reshaped family life in ways no declaration could undo. For enslaved people, the war opened narrow and dangerous paths. Both British and American forces made promises. Some kept, many broken. Thousands fled bondage seeking protection behind British lines, while others fought with American units hoping service might secure freedom. Choices were made under pressure, with incomplete information and enormous risk. The war did not resolve slavery, but it forced countless individuals to weigh survival against possibility, often with tragic outcomes. Immigrants filled the ranks as well. Some had fled poverty or conflict in Europe and found themselves drawn into another war soon after arrival. They brought skills, languages, and military experience, particularly from German states, Ireland, and France. Many fought not for an abstract America, but because opportunity and belonging were still being negotiated. Service became a way to claim a place in a society still forming. The conflict tested resolve repeatedly. Defeats were frequent and public. Retreats exposed civilians to violence and loss. In occupied cities, loyalties fractured. Neighbors chose different sides, sometimes changing more than once as fortunes shifted. Ordinary people learned quickly that neutrality was difficult to maintain. Armies demanded food and shelter. Absence invited suspicion. Survival required adaptation. The turning point for many was not a single battle, but endurance itself. Winters like the one at Valley Forge revealed how thin the margin truly was. Men died not in combat but from disease and exposure. Yet armies did not dissolve entirely. Enlistments were renewed. New recruits arrived. People stayed, often not because conditions improved, but because leaving felt like abandoning those who remained. Over time, discipline grew, systems improved, and alliances altered the balance. But even as strategy shifted at higher levels, the daily experience of the war remained grounded in routine hardship. Marching, repairing roads, standing watch, foraging for food, these tasks filled most days. Victory, when it came, was often distant and abstract, known through rumor more than certainty. Ordinary people also shaped the war beyond the battlefield. Blacksmiths repaired weapons, farmers hid supplies, printers spread news and arguments, children carried messages. Local communities raised funds, clothed soldiers, and absorbed refugees. Resistance and support were not always loud, but they were constant. The war was sustained by countless small acts rarely recorded. As years passed, fatigue set in. Some soldiers left when enlistments expired, returning to lives altered by absence. Others stayed through the end, shaped permanently by what they had seen. The promise of independence remained uncertain until very late. Even after major victories, doubts lingered. Ordinary people learned to live inside uncertainty without assurance that sacrifice would be rewarded. When the fighting finally slowed and independence became reality, the return home was uneven. Many veterans came back to farms overgrown and businesses lost. Pay was delayed or reduced. Physical injuries lingered. Emotional scars remained unnamed. The new nation had little capacity to care for them as it struggled to define itself. For many, peace brought relief mixed with disappointment. Yet the historical impact of their service was profound. The United States did not emerge solely from debates and documents, but from sustained participation by people who had little power individually and enormous influence collectively. Their willingness to endure prolonged hardship made independence possible. Without them, decisions made by leaders would have remained words without force. The revolution did not turn ordinary people into heroes in their own time. Most returned quietly to anonymity. Their names faded from records. What remained were habits shaped by shared effort, a belief that participation mattered, that authority could be questioned, and that collective action carried weight. These lessons influenced how the new nation understood itself, even when it struggled to live up to them. The story of those who fought for America is not one of uniform belief or shared background. It is a story of convergence, of individuals pulled together by circumstance rather than certainty. Some sought freedom, others stability. Some hoped for reward, others simply endured. Their motivations differed, but their presence overlapped at moments that shaped history. In remembering them, the temptation is to simplify, to assign clarity where there was confusion. But their experience was defined by ambiguity, by fear and fatigue as much as conviction. What gives their story weight is not perfection, but persistence. They stayed when leaving would have been easier. They continued when outcomes remained unclear. America was not carried forward by inevitability. It was carried by ordinary people who accepted risk without knowing if it would be justified. Their legacy is not found in monuments alone, but in the fact that a nation survived long enough to argue about what it would become. The war ended, but the lives it changed did not return to what they had been. Families adapted, communities rebuilt. Some wounds never healed. Yet from that disruption emerged a society shaped by participation rather than decree. The ordinary people who fought for America did not create a perfect nation. They made its existence possible. In the end, their contribution was not that they knew they were making history. It was that they acted without that certainty. They stepped forward because the moment demanded it, and endured because turning back felt worse. The nation that followed would wrestle with their choices for generations. But it began with people who were willing to stand, march, wait, and survive when nothing else was guaranteed.